From the moment I saw Codie Vociferous Codex spoiled in Strixhaven, I just knew I had to build a commander deck for it. I absolutely love commanders that force you to do crazy build around strategies because they change the rules of the game, and Codie does just that. Let's discuss how he works. Codie is a 1/4 artifact construct that costs 3 generic and reads, "You can't cast permanent spells," along with 4 generic and tap, add a mana of each colour, and when you cast your next spell this turn, reveal cards from the top of your library until you exile an instant or sorcery with lesser mana value. Until the end of turn, you may cast that spell without paying its mana cost, and then we put all other cards exiled this way onto the bottom of our library in a random order. Codie basically gives us a cascade style effect, giving us a free spell with each one we cast. Not only that, but his ability is mana positive, allowing us to put 4 mana in and getting 5 back, so he acts as ramp as well. The big drawback of course is that you can't play permanent spells while he's out, but as you see, that's not necessarily a drawback in today's deck. So all around, this is a very powerful ability stapled to a 5 colour commander that only needs generic mana to actually cast and activate, all on a nice 1/4 body that is not the easiest to remove. But the drawback is what makes him so unique, and it's why I'm really excited to build for him. There are absolutely ways to make this deck go infinite, however they all require permanents, like Freed from the Real, which are very tricky to get on the battlefield while Codie is out, so I'm not going to be doing that today. In my mind, there are 2 main ways to build a deck with Codie. The first is a Spellslinger deck with few, if not any, permanents, making it so every turn we are getting free extra spell to value out our opponents with. The other way is to completely ignore his drawback and fill the deck with only one specific sorcery that we want to hit every game, as his ability triggers on any spell, so if we can activate and sacrifice him, we can then cast our permanent spell to search up that one sorcery. I'm going to go one step further with these ideas, with a Spellslinger polymorph deck, where the aim is to trade out Codie with one of several super powerful creatures that are within our deck. That way we have all the value of a Spellslinger deck, but then can also cheat out a massive creature into play in the first few turns. Although big creatures are fun, they don't necessarily win commander games, so we also need a secondary win condition in the deck. And this is where it gets hard. We could go into Storm, but without permanents it's going to be hard to get our Storm count high enough to kill everyone. But there is one permanent type that we can still play with Codie out, and those are lands. So our actual win condition for the deck is to use Gates with Maze's End to sneak a win that way, while our big creatures that we cheat into play act as a diversion for our opponents to deal with. So let's get into this deck. First up, what are our big scary creatures? Metamai the Ageless, Sire of Stagnation, Diluvium Primordial, Nezahal Primal Tide, Omnath Locus of Rage, Sphinx of the Steel Wind, and Villas Broker of Blood. Sire of Stagnation, Nezahal and Villas can give us card draw to refill our hand, Metamai gives us extra turns, Diluvian lets us steal spells from our opponents, Omnath can help us build a board out with all the ramp that we're going to be playing, and Sphinx of the Steel Wind is a great blocker and a way to gain back some life if we need it. For my testing, I feel like 7 is the right amount of creatures to run. It's enough that we have some variety so we never quite know what we're going to hit, but not too many that we draw them too often. It's also a budget package to fit into the price of this deck, but you can basically put in whatever big scary creatures you want, such as dragons, Eldrazi, Phyrexian Praetors, whatever you fancy. So next, how do we find them? Polymorph, Reality Scramble, Transmogrify, Mass Polymorph, and Synthetic Destiny make up our polymorph effects. This list is a bit short, but Reality Scramble is reusable with Retrace, and we are running some tutors to help find these effects. Some of these effects are also overcosted for the single creature we'll normally have out. However, since that single creature is normally going to be Codie, they will give us the extra value from the cascade he provides. But even in the worst case, each of these spells should be trading out for a more expensive creature. Now that we've mentioned it, what are the tutors we're running for this deck? Diabolic Tutor, Mastermind's Acquisition, and the new Solve the Equation. The black tutors can search up whatever we need, while Solve the Equation can be used to find polymorph spells or one of our other game-ending sorceries. They are also low cost enough that we could potentially hit them with a Codie cascade, making them great for the deck. Now earlier I mentioned that our secret win condition for the deck is using Maze's End, so let's go over all the ways we have to make that happen. Obviously we're running all 11 gates to help us. Yes, 11 gates, they added one with Guilds of Ravnica, but on top of that we have every budget card that helps ramp and search up non-basic lands to get the gates and Maze's End out. Crop Rotation, Sylvan Scrying, Circuitous Route, Reap and Sow, Hour of Promise, and Reshape the Earth, along with Explore, Growth Spiral and Urban Evolution, and the new Eureka Moment to allow us to play extra lands in a single turn. Reshape the Earth especially is a 1-card combo for the deck, allowing us to search out every gate and Maze's End at once. And if we have Maze's End out already, and enough mana to activate it, we can also just win that turn. Since we have all these gates, we also have a Crackling Perimeter and a Guild summoned in the deck to take advantage of the land base. Although these are permanents, they are great backup effects for times when Codie isn't on the battlefield, or if we can't use Maze's End. Along with all the ramp for our gates, we also have a bunch of normal ramp as well. Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Farseek, Rampant Growth, Cultivate, Kodama's Reach, Search for Tomorrow, Spring Mind, and the new Emergent Sequence. This is a big mana deck, so we need lots of ramp to make it run smoothly. I've kept the artifacts to a minimum to help avoid dead draws, and the land ramp should be able to help smooth out our colours for the more tricky costs. Spring Mind is also a great choice with Codie, as the spell has a mana value of 9 even though you're only casting one side, allowing you to potentially cascade into an even bigger spell. Next up, I want to mention some of the other utility artifacts I felt that were good to include in this deck. Manifold Key and Voltaic Key can both be used to untap Codie and get a double trigger of his ability, and Swiftfoot Boots are a must-have for both protection and allowing us to activate his ability immediately on the turn we play him. With every additional artifact in the deck, Reality Scramble gets worse, but I feel these are good enough to be included. For draw, we have Ancestral Vision, Ambition's Cost, Urban Evolution, Treasure Cruise, Brainstorm, and Opt. Along with these, we also have our Creatures Familiar and Guild Summon, so we should be able to get enough cards into hand for as fast as we're playing them. Ancestral Vision especially is a great card for this deck, as it has a mana value of 0 and can be cast with Codie's ability. That means if we cast a non-mana spell into his trigger, we're guaranteed to hit it and draw 3 cards. Along with these draws, we also have some wheel and shuffle effects, Time Reversal, Game Plan, and Commit to Memory. We don't have a lot of graveyard recursion in the deck, so being able to shovel everything back in is really important if the game runs long. These can also help refill our hand if we get low on cards, at the cost of also refilling our opponent's hands as well. But it does screw over graveyard based decks as well, so keep that in mind when playing. Next up is our removal, and we've got a good selection in 5 colour. Swords to Plowshares, Beast Within, Generous Gift, Chaos Warp, Kaya's Guile, and Commit to Memory make up our target removal, and Urza's Ruinous Blast, Merciless Eviction, and Dune Blast make up our board wipes. All our wipes except Merciless Eviction can also avoid removing Codie, while our target removal can hit nearly anything. Several of our polymorph spells can also be used offensively, so these also count as removal for the deck. And lastly, to check off a few of the cards that didn't really have a home anywhere in this list, we have Debt to the Deathless, which is a potential finisher with all the mana we generate, but as an X spell is risky, as if we hit it off Codie's ability, it won't do anything. Hopefully at 4 mana we'll dodge it most of the time, but it's in the deck as a backup win condition. Past in Flames can help us recast spells from the graveyard, and Regrowth can be used to get them back from the graveyard. Dramatic Reversal allows us to basically get an extra turn if cascaded into with Codie, and we have Saheeli Sublime Artificer in the deck to make tokens. This is a bit of an odd choice, but she'll be pumping out servos with all the non-creature spells we're casting, which can make better polymorph targets than Codie does. Now to the mana base, which is actually super simple. We have all 11 gates plus Maze's End for our win condition. Then for our utility lands, we have Ash Barrens to search up a colour we need, Blighted Woodland for ramp, Command Tower for any colour, Exotic Orchard for some fixing, Mystic Sanctuary for recurring a spell back, Plaza of Harmony for gate synergy, Reliquary Tower to avoid discarding, Scavenger Grounds for a graveyard removal, and Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse for getting our colours. Along with these we have 4 forests, 4 islands, 2 mountains, 2 plains, and 2 swamps. Our deck is pretty heavy in blue and green, so our mana base reflects this, but as long as we can get at least 1 green source into our opening hand, our ramp should be able to colour fix us the rest of the way. And that's the deck, so let's discuss how it plays. The aim is to get Codie out as soon as possible, and then use his ability each turn to get extra value while we build our mana base up. With a turn 1 Sol Ring, you can potentially be using Codie by turn 3, however realistically it'll probably be turn 4 before you're casting a spell into his ability. As Codie acts as ramp, your turn 4 should nearly always have a 5 or 6 mana spell available, meaning you should be able to get quite far ahead with the extra spell off that. Notably, the spells aren't cast by Codie, so timing restrictions still apply. You can't just put a sorcery onto the stack as the trigger's still resolving. Right now, Codie isn't normally a huge threat on the board, but with the amount of value he can give, this might change in the future as people get used to playing against him. If that ends up being the case, it may be required that we run more protection, like cheap counterspells and protection equipment to make Codie harder to remove. But for the moment, we can generally just cast him out on turn 3 and expect him to live until turn 4. By around turn 8 or 9, you should nearly always have enough mana to cast Reshape the Earth, which should be easy to find between the draw effects, the wheels, and the tutors we're running. Once you cast that, your opponents will normally have only one turn to deal with it, or lose. Even better, if you can get Maze's End out and untapped beforehand, you can potentially just win on the spot. If our gates or Maze's End get exiled, we still have our big creatures to kill opponents, along with things like Crackling Perimeter to put a timer on the game, and Debt to the Debtless to deal massive damage with all the mana in this deck. In simple terms, this deck wants to play a control strategy for most of the game while getting crazy value of Codie's ability each turn. In the long game, you should be able to win. You just need to avoid dying to early aggression. For that reason, I'd rate this deck at least a 7 on the power scale. Though with just a few more upgrades to speed it up further, it could easily be an 8. It is by far the strongest budget deck I've built for this channel, and it can go toe to toe even with my more expensive decks. It's also a bunch of fun to play, because your turns always have an element of chance to them. Flipping over cards to see what you hit next means games rarely ever play out the same way. For that reason, I can highly recommend building Codie like this, and if you're looking for a new deck to play, this is a great commander to build around. Now normally I go into some cards that didn't quite make the cut or got priced out of the deck, but for a 5-color monstrosity like this, there's simply too much. My maybe board was nearly 20 or 30 cards long, so today, just some highlights. Scapeshift is crazy strong for this deck, letting you trade away all your basics for gates instead, and is a must include if you want to up the power of this deck. Fractured Identity is a silly card for the deck, giving all your opponents a copy of Codie and laughing at the chaos you can cause when they can't cast half their hand because you've given them your commander. Mizzix's Mastery is a great include if you want to have a big turn where you cast a graveyard full of spells. And Conflux is a great tutor card that lets you basically tutor up a new hand and get everything you'd need to win a game. That's it for now. I hope you've enjoyed this deck tech as much as I have building it, and thanks for watching.